You're with Julian on the Brano, and I'm going to get through some of these reviews. Extraction 2, which recently came out on Netflix, the John Wick adjacent franchise attempt build. So the first film I was a big fan of, and Chris Hemsworth played a guy that was drunk in the middle of the outback in Australia, who was a John Wick-esque guy. His wife had left him because their child had died. He had gone to serve in Afghanistan deliberately to avoid being there for his son's death, and was this broken man, and ended up working for private contractors to go and rescue someone. And in that film, he rescued the child of an Indian mafioso who had been kidnapped in Bangladesh, and that was the selling point of that movie, was using the city in Bangladesh as a unused cinematic. It was incredibly vibrant looking, and it was a good film. The only thing that I thought let it down a little bit, and I thought the acting by Chris Hemsworth was actually really good, probably his best. And given that it was such an action-based film, he and I don't remember the Indian subcontinent actor were both brilliant in that film. And I wish it had less action, or I wish that the action in it was like a third as long, because the action scenes went on far too long. And I think its director, Sam Hargrave, is another stunt coordinator connected with. It's produced by the Russo brothers as well. So he's got Russo and written by Russo. So Sam Hargrave has come from that stunt world, just like the director of John Wick, Chad Stahelski. He's come from that world as well. So the parallels there were enormous. But this was a much more military-based, military hardware and tactical ops and all of this other stuff going on. But the action sequences would drag on for 10 minutes, and I thought that it was a better film when those action sequences had stopped. It was relentless to the point of being reductive. So this time around, they virtually killed Chris Hemsworth at the end of that film, and unfortunately they did kill that possibly Indian actor who I mentioned, which is a shame because I wish that he had survived, but given the Fast and Furious way of the world, they'll probably just resurrect him. But they make sure that we know that Chris Hemsworth character is going through rehab as Tyler Rake. Come up with that name, Tyler Rake. Oh my god. A former Australian SAS turned a Black Ops mercenary. So he's retired to live in a hut, in a beautiful hut in Norway or somewhere. And he's, the people that employ him are, go off and into the wilderness. And then Idris Elba turns up and says that he wants to use him again. And this time around, it is to rescue a woman and her child from a prison in Georgia, where she is the de facto prisoner of her own husband, who is one of the top organised crime figures in Georgia. He's been imprisoned, and he has forced his very estranged wife and child to live in the prison with him. And Idris Elba knows that this woman is the sister-in-law of him. So the wife that has left Chris Hemsworth because he wasn't there when their child passed away, her sister is the one that he's being sent to rescue. And the other kicker is that the Adam Bresser is the brother of the Georgian mafia guy. So they're brothers, and they run the entirety of organised crime in Georgia. And during the early rescue attempt in the prison, which is absolutely amazing. I don't know how long it goes on for. It must be over 20 minutes. And I said that I don't want these really long action sequences. Instead of shortening the action sequences down, they've made them tell a story a lot better. So that whole rescue attempt in the prison is a landmark in action sequences in this kind of movie. It's an incredible. It's never ending, but I felt like the ones in Extraction 1 just ground you down after a while, and it came reductive where it didn't matter. Another henchman's gone. This one, it kept a story flowing through, and there were stakes on the table where I didn't actually know what was going to come out of the end. But during the course of this rescue attempt, he kills the first brother, setting up an obvious plot, which is the other brother trying to hunt them down. And the other point in the story is the mother, who is Hemsworth's sister-in-law, her teenage son. So she's got a young daughter and a teenage son. Her teenage son is borderline wavering towards the father and hating the mother. So he causes a lot of problems along the way. Again, it's a simple plot, but I kind of feel like everything was done slightly better. I felt like everything had a little bit more of an impactful note in this film. The long-form action sequences weren't as tiring. They were often really, really good. Some good locations. I think is it Austria? I can't bother to look. But they blow up a lot and they kill a lot of people, but they're a little bit more interesting. There's a battle on the rooftop, which isn't unusual, but I didn't look at a lot of it because the heights thing wasn't good. I don't know if Hemsworth did as much acting in this one, but overall, Golshifteh Farhani, who's a very famous, I think, Iranian. Yeah, she's an Iranian actress who was pretty rubbish in Body of Lies in a really rote character. She wasn't very good in the first film because there was nothing written for her, but she's much better in this film. Everything is better. And she's like the sidekick of Chris Hemsworth, and has her brother as well. And who's the one that turns up as... Oh, yeah, one of my favourite underrated actresses this century is Olga Kurylenko. Kurylenko. I will never get it right. Most underrated Bond actress, I feel, from the most underrated Bond film, Quantum of Solace. But she's been brilliant in so many films, and she turns up right at the end as well. So they're obviously panning this out to go on for a little while, and I don't mind if they do. I can deal with Hemsworth and Olga easily. Idris Elba's character was I find those characters grating. The ones that work for shadowy organisations that turn up and all that stuff. But it felt like everything meant a little bit more. Everything was a little bit more coherent, and not just like, here's a scene of dramatic stuff, here's the next scene of action. It kind of flowed a bit better. I feel like they learnt their lessons from the first film, which I thought was pretty good. I thought it was a very good film, actually. If you like lots and lots and lots of violence, which in a movie I do. But this one was a more coherent film. It's not in the same class as something like the John Wick franchise, but it's adjacent to it, and a lot more interesting than a lot of the other scenarios that I've been watching. Particularly, there was a raft of these films like Six Underground, and there was another one with Van Diesel, and there was the Charlize Theron one. I can't even remember what these films were called, that were all like actioners in this sort of vein, but very, very unmemorable and tiring to watch. And so far, Extraction's done very well, I think. And obviously, having Hemsworth as the Paul is a big one for both him and the series, given that he's now post-Thor. He will be definitely interested in hanging on to another franchise, getting, I think, $20 million for starring in a film that wasn't even released in the cinema. It's really well shot, and there are some really, really long-form action sequences that aren't quite as boring as the ones in the first film after a while. So I liked it. I liked all the characters in it. And I thought the ones that were a little bit goofy in the first film actually had a bit more sort of emotional weight to them. I liked it a lot. I'm going to give Extraction 2 an 8 out of 10.